daisies. Sorry if I lost anyone there for a minute. I accidentally fumbled around. Accidentally hit the back button too many times, so I had to restart the restart the stream. We're just scrubbing our potatoes here. Got out about 6 potatoes. One of the earlier recommendations I had for folks was to, for produce, is to buy a produce that will last a week, because you'll want to be replacing your produce about every week. And then usually at grocery stores, they'll guarantee the freshness up to a certain number of days. Sometimes it's 4 days, other places would be 7 days. One of the tricks I'll show right away is you can see how much this cutting board will slide, and that doesn't give you a very safe cutting surface. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to take one of the kitchen towels, see if that's in the shot. Yeah, it's in the shot. And we'll place it down on the cutting board, and this will give something a lot firm. I know there's been a couple different cutting boards on the show. I decided this time I was going to buy a nicer, bigger one, but I knew that a lot of people are working off a cutting board just this size. So I wanted to make sure that I could work with that a little bit. That way people kind of can see the steps that will be taken. Alright, I'm going to have my other vegetables here in the sink. And we'll have them rinsed out. I usually call these little guys as what I refer to as a fridge raid. It's I'm very big on, like I was just saying, helping people make sure their food doesn't go bad, because they go out all the way to the store, they get up all their food, and then they get it home, and then it just goes bad, and then they have to order out anyway. So I know there's lots and lots of chefs that can teach you how to cook. Like, there's plenty of instruction videos on how to cook, but there's not as many about how to stock your kitchen. So we have we're starting, and I have the names for it, is that there's many places where you can get about like a 9-piece set, and a 9-piece set will include the lid. So you're looking for like one large pot, saucepan, lipped, and like a little. Man, oh man, it's been a little bit since I've been in front of the camera. I'm stuttering all over my words a little bit. I'll have to be able to, glad I get this little practice. I'm glad I decided to go live. So we're going to put, I got some peanut oil right here. I'm going to show you what we got going on here. So that is what's going to be happening in the works. So let's see. We're actually going to have this a little further away. Yeah, that should work. Nah, we'll have the pot behind it. It'll be okay. This phone has seen worse. I'd rather people have be able to see. Well, I'll have to go back and forth. So I poured just enough oil where you can see at the edge of the lip here, and it's just enough to cover the bottom. We're going to lightly saute all our vegetables before we start cooking them. Just a very light, you're not going to want to brown them. It's a little bit of an extra step, so if you don't have the oil, you actually could just fill up your potatoes with the water. But we're going to go a little bit back and forth. This isn't, this recipe today isn't anything that is really even planned. This is more just, I was going to show people like what a typical day is, because really chefs don't cook for themselves, you know, or it's just like kind of like one of those little things that, little industry secrets, I guess it is that like, yeah, chefs can make like all these world-class meals and such, but they don't always eat as healthy as they should, you know. Everyone can always be a little bit better. So this is just like a typical little day where I'm not nothing fancy, just very much like I wanted to give like a real life situation where everyone's busy working. Just give good tips. Like the big one I've been repeating in the stream, there's got to be a little bit of repetition in what I'm saying, because people come and go through the stream. So one of the things you'll hear me say a lot of the times is clean as you go, sign of a pro. This is an onion I had from an earlier meal, and so I've already peeled back. And this is all, and I'm only slicing this. This is all going to be, we're going to use an immersion blender. So I'm just going to break it up with my hands. You can see how it holds its form, like this. So I when I say break it up, that means to get the individual ringlets out. So instead of throwing it in the pot like that, we're throwing it in the pot like this. And we are going to get our oil. I'm going to put it to a 3.5. And then when you're working, what's going to be very helpful when you're working on a cutting board this small is just working with either more cutting boards the same size, or grab a plate or a bowl. For us, we're going to use a plate. What you'll do is transfer and continue cutting. Now at this point, we have our oil heating and we're starting to do the prep. Now my next tip for people is that there's lots of folks that say that one person cooks and then the other person will clean. I have a different method that I bring, and what this is called clean as you go. And that means as we make a mess, we clean up the mess. That way there's not just a bunch of dishes. And nobody's perfect, you know. It's not like you have to be like stingily strict about this. It's about the habits that you build up over time. Having some dishes in the sink isn't even a big deal for me, just because it's so much of how much I enjoy cooking for people. It's just more, if you're wanting to save time, I bring up and I stress the importance of a clean sink, because it'll save you more time overall, because you'll have everything just ready. You'll be ready to make your artwork. And I have the chat on the other side of this camera, so I will be making sure to pop in every once in a while. Now, what's also what you might have noticed is that when you rinse it, you can't just lazily rinse it. You need to think about what you're doing. Where is the dirt going to be? It's going to be in between where it was sitting in the dirt, and it sat in the dirt like this. And there's dirt that will get in between here. And you can see how it's nice and white because I cleaned it very well. Now, what we could also do is that you can save these. One of the last videos I did, you would actually save pieces like this and use it for soup stocks. Now look at how much bigger these are. Now I also recommend having a little bit of a bigger knife, but again, I know some people just don't have everything. So, cut it in half right away. Put this over on our workstation. And when you're working with vegetables, you should understand that you don't need, like, you can use every bit if you really need to, but it is not necessary. You can be picky, like how that there's this on it. Well, there is no longer that there. You just remove the blemish. Or you would, and this root, it would be more bitter. There might be nutrients and such. And you put that in the soup stock, leftover bits. And we're prepping. This is all very, very white. I'll take quite a bit. You know, you would think more, but it's okay. And then when you have it at this, and then again, more plates. Try to, what will help you increase speed is that prepping it all up to, say, this amount. It'll make more sense here in a moment. So you prep, you get all your sticks. Oh, haha, I almost got ahead of myself. Keep on getting all your sticks. And this is the other end of it. Here, pretty straightforward. And you can see the less cuts I make, the more time you save, the less wear on your knife. Let me just peruse the chat there real quick. I'm always open to any questions people do, because something I'm very interested in is how is that everyone has different foods available to them. So that means that the recipes change and the way you cook can change. Now that I have all the sticks here, I can go back. Now instead of working with just one or two, I have a whole bundle. I think the biggest difference in fine dining and home cooking is that not everything has to be perfect. Like, it's okay to have like a little bit pieces that are bigger. However, you'll get better over time too with your knife skills, because you don't want to make too much time making it perfect, because it'll get perfect later. Also, in this case, this is a very good beginner's recipe, because we're going to be using an immersion blender. So that means it's an immersion blender. is this, and you stick it in the soup and it blends it while it's hot. So it'll make our pieces smaller. Now, I don't want people to be scared, though, that this cooking show uses a lot of appliances. But we do not use many appliances. This immersion blender is well worth it if you don't have many appliances. But if you do not have an immersion blender, there are ways where you can use a regular blender, like a mixer blender. And part of cooking is listening. I just heard my oil is starting to come up to temperature. And what's very important, what I want you to notice, is that I always have my thumb tucked away. Do not cut like this. Always make sure to guard your fingers. If you're interested in being a professional cook, you look way more cooler as a cook having all your fingers. What looks good, if I were to interview someone for a cooking job and they told me that they were recently cooking, I'd want to see where the burns. I have quite the burn, though. You'd want to see where the burns are on their knuckles, hands. Now I want to make sure that they have all their fingers. I think that's what I would look for. Alright, now these are going to be ready to add, so let me twist around the camera here. Wonderful. And then sometimes if I'm unsure, you can see that the oil will kind of get more clear. And I'll throw one in just to see. Looking pretty good. I actually can turn up the heat a little bit more. And when I do this, I turned it from a 3.5 to a 4, because the oil has my full concentration now, and it's taken the time to go from 0 to 3.5, and it's safe. It wouldn't ever be too hot. Now that it has my full attention, I turn it to a 4, and I only have to wait a little bit before I know this is going to be even warmer. I'm just breaking up my onion in the meantime. I threw one in there to show people a little trick so they can know. Oh goodness, is my phone at 15%? Oh yeah, it is already. Ooh, do I have the charger blocked? That's so funny. Okay. Now my favorite to stir this would be just a wood spoon. You can use the plastics for temperature, usually for temperatures no higher than 400 degrees. This is under 400 degrees, so we're okay, it's not going to melt. By some dishes with oil cooking at very hot temperatures, it is very possible. And what I am doing here is that I want to make sure all the onion is coated with a little bit of oil and that it's not up on the edges. And you can tell it's coated with oil because it looks a little bit wet. It has a new sheen on it. And it's important to not have water involved in this process, otherwise the oil will pop because oil and water do not mix. And I'm sorry, there's a little bit more of an accent coming out right now that's not how I sound more often than not. I can't say it's the strangest thing that's ever happened to me, but I think I'm just being, or just adjusting to how this kitchen sounds. And we ended up using that whole head of celery, funny enough. We're going to set this lettuce. This will cook the least, so that's okay. We're going to now, so it's okay to leave out till later. The onions, we want a nice caramelization, or just starting to get a translucent. Excuse me, those are two very different things in fact. Caramelization and getting them translucent, two very different things. Now I'm going to be bad, and I'm going to throw this stuff away. I highly, highly, highly recommend looking into composting opportunities, or to use those to make your own vegetable stocks. I moved in recently and I'm still getting all my ducks in a row, so not as many things are as set up as I'd like for that. And now let's bring you a little bit closer to the action. Yeah, part of cooking is listening. So you can probably hear those onions going in the background. And I'll do about 3 potatoes, and then I'll go give it a stir, and then I'll go do 3 potatoes, and then go give it a stir. And then if things are cooking really quickly on those onions, I'll just add in the celery before I finish peeling and cutting these potatoes. And then you can do this with a paring knife. It would be a knife about this size as well. And again, it's a nice skill to have, but it is not always necessary. Even these, I hear a nice sizzle, so I'm going to go stir the onions. One quick stir. Woo! Back to the potatoes. Ah! Did it twice. Alright. My goodness. That's a slippery little fiend right there. And then if there's something brown, I'll take the top, just scoop it out. Like I said, with your vegetables, you get to be picky. You don't have to, with vegetables, because you're trying to replace them every week. You don't necessarily need to eat something, a moldy vegetable. Like, you can just let that go back to nature. It's okay. Like, I wish more people could see how their food was grown, so they just could understand how many potatoes there are, or just how much celery there is. And you know what? That's why, like, another reason why I really believe that people are good people, and they wouldn't take much, is because how well some people will treat moldy bread or potatoes. They'll still try to eat them, even though it'll make them sick. Yeah, I too eat old potatoes. I don't eat them with the skin, but sometimes their roots will start to grow, and I'll just cut a little deeper and still eat that. Checking in on the chat. Oh, we're doing pretty good. Okay. For those of you, I don't mind giving a little repeat. So what this show going on today is that I know that there's plenty of people that need to just have an unglamorous look at the kitchen. Just, you know, like there's ideals we'd all love to work out of a clean kitchen. But sometimes, you know, your kitchen was dirty the night before. You weren't feeling well the night before. You know, it's not perfect every day. And we strive for excellence, but we will not strive for perfection. Excellence is a good goal, though. So, I thought it'd be a good day to be able to show people. Still nipped myself. Gotta be careful. It's a brand new one, so it's extra sharp. Oh, got me a little bit. Woo! That one really went all over the place. Looks like it got my thumb a little bit better than I wanted to admit. We'll have to take care of that. And we're almost at a great spot to be able to do that too. And you can see here, all I'll do there is I'll just cut into it more to get rid of the blemish. Now I wanted to point something out. If I were cooking in a commercial kitchen, I had already stopped to dress this thumb because you can't mess around with blood. You will get somebody sick. It is not a question. And people are like, "Oh, the blood will cook." I'm like, no. Like, you need to. That's the standard. It's not about how well you can make the food taste. It's about how many people you keep healthy, because you're feeding them to be healthy. Like we eat to be healthy, or we eat to enjoy our lives. We don't eat to get sick. So now, before I get too far, I'm going to go ahead. And I've been very careful. We just have it up. And again, you know, stuff happens. We're making, and I'm being very good on it. If you're not as experienced, it might be a little. You might be getting blood places. If you're doing that, just stop what you're doing and clean. I managed. It's just a very little nick. I managed not to get the blood anywhere. I'm going to take this out. This is where you would use a first aid kit. But my body is very stubborn. But this is why when you are cooking, one of the things that it would be helpful to have, you know, first aid kit, which is just Band-Aids. There is an anti-burn cream, another very good one to have. It's called Silvadine cream. Go ahead and get that back on the action. And again, just how I'm taking care of it, we're going to put some pressure on it real quick. I believe that I just nicked myself just very slightly. Now we're going to see if this bleeding stops. Now there's just the littlest bit of brown, so we're going to go ahead, not adjust the temperature too much. And still a little bit of blood. And kind of the trick is that you want to get the blood flowing. Movement is healing. So I'm just going to flex it around a little bit, and your blood coagulates, and it will stop the bleeding on its own. And if the bleeding doesn't stop, you will need to get a Band-Aid. And then the next step that you can actually do is that you can glove up. So if a Band-Aid is unavailable in the moment, we can still glove up. And even at home, I have the gloves available. Because when you're cooking for a lot of people, you need to you are responsible for their health. I'll show you guys what we're doing here. And then I only need to make these, I'm only doing rough chops. I'm just going to add the potatoes straight in. Everything else, I just wanted to get a nice little melt's not the right word. Glaze isn't the right word. I just wanted to get my onions translucent because I'm not going to be working with much spices, so I'm really going to cook those onions. Really help bring out some flavor. I'm just tossing in my potatoes in behind. And again, this will be a very forgiving, put together recipe because we're going to be using an immersion blender. So even if not all our chops are perfect, you'll still be okay. And we started with the onions. They got translucent, so to buy us a little bit more time to make it take a little longer to cook, we added in the celery. And now that it went from room temperature and it's going to go to the temperature of the pot. And instead of adding all the potatoes at once, we're just adding them as we cut them. That way most of it will be at the temperature that we need it to be. By the time we are focusing our attention on it. It'll be after we get our potatoes added, and we will add in, we'll just use enough water to cover the potatoes. Woo, that was close. I felt that on the glove. And I'm wearing the glove, for any newcomers, I'm wearing the glove because I got myself a little bit of a nick. We're just waiting for that to, we don't want to get blood everywhere, you know. I was really excited to come back onto the stream. I have a lot of fun streaming and showing folks how to cook. It's one of those things where I saw that there's too many gatekeepers to such like a necessary human skill, or there were a lot of misogyny maybe thrown into it. Like it's all very interesting to talk about because it's you know, being in the kitchen traditionally I don't even want to say traditionally. It's just, for a few decades, in the scheme, for a few decades, it seemed to be very much like a job of a woman, but that was just, I don't know, gross. Because it's always the woman's job to cook, right? Until you get into an industrial kitchen, and then all of a sudden, it's a man's job again. Scraping out the water. Alright, now I know what you were thinking. I was creating a lot of work for myself, getting all those plates. So we're going to make sure to not leave those sitting around. We're going to go ahead, rinse them off. Again, put to the side. This is, as that's coming to temp, we can bring our attention back over to the dish pile that we got going on. Make sure, take a look. Keep the glove on for now. So now we've gone from handling food to where we're going to handle dirty dishes. So something that we'll need to do before we go back to this food is we'll need to wash our hands. But what we'll be doing here is actually we're only going to be adding in about 4 cups of water. Maybe a little bit more, just enough to cover the bottom. So I don't really even need to, I'm not coming into contact with any food at this point. So even if this washing dishes takes me a little bit longer now, it's okay. Because all I have to do is add the water. And then I can wash that utensil. I'm not actually touching anything anymore. So we'll go ahead, start reorganizing some of this. Now those. Don't worry, not too much will be. Make sure we got our water nice and hot. A few easy things that we can get out of the way on the drying mat. Because at the end of this cooking show, I want to end with a clean kitchen spill. Not just have a new stack of dishes to take care of. You know what I'm saying? Ooh, I'm going to have to get that charger here real soon too. We're at 5% for sure. Oh, oh. There we go. Alright. This I put in just because I needed to save some space. Gotta wash those. Alright. Let's get to the soapy hot goodness. And again, well, I'm not a big fan about using my limited counter space as a drying rack. sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. I want to make sure I keep these utensils clean and out. That way if I need them at all in my cooking, I'll have them available. And I want you to kind of take notice that I'm not necessarily re-rinsing everything, by making sure there's no food. And in this case, on this guy right here, I'll go ahead, he's clean enough where I can go ahead and give him a complete wash and have him be out of the way. That way I have a little bit more room out of the dishwasher. Gotta make sure you keep that water hot though. You want to make sure you're scrubbing the outside, on the lip, and back on the inside again. Make sure you get all the soap off too. And again, one of my top tips is make sure you have the light turned on. Now something like this is big, but it takes so much extra water to make sure all that greasy film doesn't come off. So I just knock off what I can. And I'll let the dishwasher deal with the rest. Now we have over here, those potatoes are right about ready, and we only have 2 more utensils to rinse off here, as well as these. Sometimes you have to give your strainers a little bit of an extra elbow grease because it was just pasta, but pasta can be have starchy water in it, and it can kind of leave a clear film residue. You gotta make sure that you take care of that. Again, making sure you clean the outsides. Just give it a nice little visual inspection to make sure that you actually cleaned it like you thought you did. We got one more spatula to clean off here. Wonderful. Now, like I said, we're going to go ahead and give our hands a wash. I can't wash that glove. As hot as water as I can, because I really want to make sure I clean out any blood that had gotten around my little wound. And that's how you'd handle that on the line, by the way. You can't necessarily just stop dropping everything that you're doing. It should also not be that big of a deal to eventually to get a Band-Aid. I'm not exactly sure where in the house they are right now. Yeah, it's kind of my biggest conundrum. Ha! Wink! Oh, that actually reminds me of a sound that I'd really want to do, because there's a sometimes in anime shows they'll do their super moves, except their super moves will still have like English translation. And one of the move I'm thinking about is Death Wink. It sounded a lot like something else I was just talking about. So what I'm going to make sure is that I'm going to go around to the bottom of this, and it's all, I definitely want to add that water, but I also want to make sure that there's nothing that's already sticking to the bottom here. So I'm going through, and anything that kind of started sticking to the bottom, you know, it didn't show the clear bottom of the pot. Make sure you just give it a little scrape, and we'll go ahead. Woo. Gotta pour with confidence. And that 4 cups was just enough to cover it, which is exactly what we wanted. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn it all the way up to high, let it boil, and then we'll bring it back down to a simmer. And we're going to add some salt as well. Might have been a little, some folks might say it might be a little bit too early to do the salt. Now, kind of the cool thing too is that what I just would do, since I am running the dishwasher as often, having 1 or 2 extra plates, because I'm kind of like, in a way, I'm kind of like a clean freak and love the dishwasher too much because of how hot your dishwasher is going to wash. It's a way hotter water than my hands can even withstand. So I always like having that extra clean because you're eating off of it, you know? Putting that inside your body. And you can see too is that very quickly, like the leftover dishes, like this is not going to be a thing anymore. And we also have food on the way now at this point. So it's like a double plus. Very, 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 very simple recipe too. Nothing super fancy. We're going to get a lid on these potatoes, cook them for about 20 minutes or so. Maybe add about, and I want it to be a little bit on the thicker side because I want, we don't have any milk to add to this either. Another great addition would be able to add some milk, mace, or paprika. But let's say, you know, you're working really hard, and what does bachelor eating like even really look like, right? Well, I'm just like, well, there's a couple things that you can do to eating well that doesn't necessarily, that you wouldn't necessarily think about. So we're going to have this. And yes, I still haven't added in the lettuce. We have not forgot. It is going to be one of the very last things we add just because of how little it's going to take to heat this. So we'll shred it and we'll add it in about the last 5 minutes before we immerse it. And we'll have it on top of those dishes for now. Get this nice little bit of rinse and clean. Same with this. And you can see too, I've already nailed down like the dirty dishes, right? But now I have plenty of time to like, kind of like nitpick, find anything that I've missed, you know. And right now the kitchen is very much still under construction. I'm doing a little bit of an early cooking show just because of how much I like doing this. I love like cooking and just showing how easy people, and all this was, is just water, potatoes, onion, a little bit of oil. You didn't even need the oil part for as well. And we're just going to let that all come to the boil. And like I'm saying, the immersion blender that we got over there, this little stand, this is, like I was saying earlier, I'll go ahead and bring the immersion blender over. You can find these guys. Now I know people like to buy, sometimes people want to buy a little bit inexpensive, but sometimes they're worried about going too cheap. But for these immersion blenders, for what they do, you really could probably find one for like 19 US dollars. Like fairly inexpensive. This is a little bit more of a fancier version because I really use so few different appliances, and I don't usually buy things, new things too often. So this was a little bit of a splurge that I did back in the day when I did my tomato basil bisques. And I actually still need to clean this guy from moving out from the Colorado state. And I have the time to do that right now because I've already cleaned up all my other dishes. So it has a few different, this model, the reason why is more expensive is because it has different attachments. On the $19 blender, it's only going to have this one attachment here. And we have it attached and ready to go. This is just a whisk and a beater. There is a separate meat grinder attachment that this could also do. And now I didn't really touch this until we started boiling, and now I'm going to go ahead and give it another stir. Alright, we got the lid on. And then now that I've also, this is a great time to actually take care of a little bit of a sweep. And then at the end here, the immersion blender, as I was explaining. So after we let it cook for about 20 minutes, I'm not going to add in any more water to this. Some alterations to the recipe is that you could add about a cup of milk to this. And all this was 6 potatoes. These are my typical measurements that I'd usually do, so this is pretty consistent. I'd use about 6 potatoes to 4 cups of water to 1 onion. So or like 1 white onion, like large, and a large white onion would be larger than your fist. Like a large onion would be, say, if you kind of know if you're a big or small person. So if you're a big person, it would be your fist. If you're a small person, it would be both your fists. Would be a large onion. The potatoes as well, a medium-sized potato would probably be the size of your hand. Clenched. And earlier you saw me how I did the measurements. It's about 2 potatoes. I wanted to make about 5 to 6 servings, and so it was 2 potatoes per person. And then my onion math is about, you wouldn't use just a whole onion for one person, so you use about 1/3 of an onion each. So it'd be 1/3 of an onion to 2 potatoes. If I was really just cooking for myself, I'd cut up 1/3 of an onion, 2 potatoes, and 2 ribs of celery is how that math would break back down. And now that that is boiling, I am going to go ahead and turn it down to a 3. And we're going to go ahead and get our lettuce prepped at this point. Oh, son of a gun. You know what that means? I put one of my cutting boards away too early. For shame. Do I even know what I am doing? Huh? I think I'll show you more. Instead of showing you necessarily all the parts I kept, I'll show you the parts that I got rid of. So we tore out the root. Anything that this is very white, and the outermost piece, the most blemished. It's not very holding its form. You can see how this has just a little bit more green. Chickens would go nuts for that, so if you have chickens, that would be great. And we'll just dice this, just shred it, just straight shred. Nothing super fancy. Again, it's all going to be immersion blend, so you don't have to worry about making it too small. That was probably a little bit of overkill there. But yeah, I'm not worrying about some of the bigger pieces because they're going to get blended up. You might notice that when I have scraps on this towel, I'm trying to throw the scraps into the sink instead of onto my floor. But speaking of my floors, this would be a great time to get a little sweep in. So that's what I'm going to do next. So we have now discussed 2 tools that probably aren't on any of those AI generated little lists about what you need in a kitchen. So the 2 that we've gone over is a first aid kit and a broom. Oh, wait, there's been one more as well. Does anyone know what it is? Anyone know what it is? What the third one? What the third tool I'll give it a little bit more of a hint. That third technology that we brought in. I stepped off the camera. That's the final hint for you. Is I stepped off the camera to go grab it. It was the antibacterial soap. There's another one that we grabbed. We're getting a nice sweep done in the kitchen. It's never a bad time to wash your hands. Alright, we're going to grab a fork and we're going to fork our potatoes. What did he say? I said we're going to fork our potatoes. Yeah, man. Fork our potatoes. Oh, is that actually a thing on this dish set? Voila, it is actually a, let's see. Have you seen that TikTok trend? I don't know if you have. How you know you got that quality set, man. Just make sure you don't drop it in whatever else you're cooking. So we'll give this another spin-a-roo. And we're going to look for, like, we don't want to test this in a small potato. We want to test this in a big potato. We want to make sure it is nice and soft. Oh, yeah, it is. We're definitely punching all the way through. We're going to go ahead, while we have it open, add that iceberg lettuce. Boom. Now, what we'll have to do here is you'll bring the soup up over it. Now, I'm not worried. You'll see how it's I'll show you now. It's a little bit above the water level that I'd like it to be, but this lettuce is going to cook down real quick, and I bet here in just a minute you'll see that it'll all cook back down under the water level, or we'll need to add as much as like maybe a cup more of water. Looking at this right now, looking pretty good, but might need to add as much as 1 cup of water. And you know that old Chinese proverb that they have, Mr. Blue, is that if you don't poop, you die. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. You don't poop, you die. That is my sage wisdom advice for the day. And also, clean as you go, sign of a pro. Even nice little swept floors. It's a good deal. Now, ideally, too, you'll be seeing me, and we still have this on a 3.5, by the way. We're not boiling it. It's got the lid on. That'll help all the goodness stay inside of it. And we're being patient. We're not going to keep on stirring it. We're just going to let it do its thing. It's going to cook down. It's going to be great. It's going to be done. And the seasoning I wish I had for this is probably a little bit of nutmeg. But a little bit of mustard might bring out some flavor. That might be nice. Or, you know, this might not be too bad. If I had chives, serve it with some chives, and maybe a little bit of some sour cream. Sour cream can go on soups. It's one of those ones that people don't necessarily think of. I'm a big enchilada guy, so I'm always, or in tacos and Crunchwrap Supremes, but that's not a real food. Alright, as you can see too, it is reduced down a little bit. We're going to go ahead and keep on stirring it. You see I got my lovely stir and stick spatula. Yeah, that's how the pros do it. Pros don't use spoons, man. Pros use spatulas. You know, you gotta get with the times. So now at the very bottom of this is going to be the much hotter. You can see all these potatoes done a wonderful job breaking down. Okay. Wonderbar. Now, we're going to go ahead. We're going to turn off the heat momentarily. And we're going to go ahead and give this a blend. Just finding out all the quirks of the new place, huh? Yes, yes, phone. Okay. Whew! That would have been a sad day if this didn't work. Okay. Let's see if I can do both at once. Yeah! Cooking with grease now. You'll watch the transformation happen. Alright. I'm curious to see what the consistency of that is like. Give it a little taste test here. Now, if there's anything I learned from it, I'll give it a little... Okay. I wanted to go on that thicker side too, so this is nice. Now, the important thing is 3 blows. If there's anything I learned from anime, is food will always be the perfect temperature, from steaming hot, but 3 blows, and you're golden. Woo! Yeah, ooh, right there. Okay, so we're definitely, you saw how I salted it with like kind of 2 dashes. Ooh, and this is still bubbling up on me even though I already turned that heat off. So you can kind of see where I wanted to kind of go over a little bit of when I decided to throw the lettuce in there. You saw I let it cook for about 2 or 3 minutes. The lettuce I cooked as least as I could. Let's see. Woo! And it's still bubbling. It's nice and thick too. It's so thick, it's the reason why it's bubbling. like that. I'll go ahead, use the immersion blender to keep on finishing up the stir. And because it's thicker, it's going to take, to get that salt in, you're going to want to blend it for a little bit longer. Alright. Now immersion blenders are definitely one of those things where you gotta wash that right away. You don't want to have to be scrubbing this. Back on the stand with you. Now this is great and all that we have a soup, right? Let's get a ladle for that though. Ladle. Specifically, I want a ladle. Nothing less will do than a ladle. I don't see a ladle. Oh, the one clean. Ha! The one clean thing I actually had. So you definitely want the ladle to serve the soup. I'm going to give it a nice little stir. Go ahead and put the lid back on that. We're also going to push it off the heat. Now I want to show you guys how to make a salad here. Okay. All right. How close and personal can we get? Yeah, that ain't bad, I would say. Now, I know, right? Oh, he's crazy. He's sneaking the fruit in on you. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Doing that crazy nonsense. And then this apple was actually so young that it didn't really have that thick of a core. There's only really this one piece here. And all I'm going to do is just cut the core off like that. That's where the core ended up in there. And there's a little bit more, I can see a little bit more on the core on this side. Now I know some people are like, oh, I'm gonna be a badass. I'm gonna eat the whole apple. And you might like see that in like some thing that's like trying to make this person look like a badass, but I really think it's kind of more of a misunderstood metaphor because the apple seeds are poisonous. So some guy that is out, eating the whole apple to the core and stuff is kind of more like saying that he's ride or die type of business. Anyway, it's not that important. So one apple. The longest part it took was the apple. A plate full of greens, I really recommend having a plate rather than a bowl. Look, I found a little bit more of the core. Half an apple would be enough for one salad, but this was a small apple, and I'm not afraid of my veggies, so I'm going to double it up. But I'm just going to let you know proportionally, one would be fine. I used, if you're wondering, well, what type of apple did I get? Is that you gotta try, and you gotta try the apples, man. There's so many different types of apples to try. You gotta try them, and you'll find ones that you like. Personally, for this apple, it tastes it's a Honeycrisp. Tastes surprisingly like a Granny Smith apple. Oh. And then kind of another tip is that you actually want to go a little bit on this raspberry vinaigrette, a little bit lighter on the dressing. And then we're going to finish it off. Again, you want to go a little bit on the lighter because this is going to be a really rich, especially if you're used to just cheddar cheese or something, but we're going to add a little bit of goat cheese. And if you like really don't know what I'm talking about, like I'm talking about like no more than 7 or 8 big balls on this thing. You will overpower it if you add too much. And voila! In no time flat, we have put together a nice little salad. Don't let anyone demasculate you either for eating a salad like this, because this took like 5 seconds to put together. If I didn't have to cut the apple, you're literally just throwing this on the plate. You can treat cooking like golfing, because the best people at golf play the golf the least. What I mean is that the point of golf is to play less golf. And so many guys, you know, they'll do all these extra steps. They're okay with the protein shakes and stuff, but I don't know. That seems to be like the real, just like, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but like, think about it though. It's just like eating a salad or having some sort of fruity cocktail is way more like, quote unquote, might be seen as unmasculine, when the masculine thing, quote unquote, again, just like, not trying to pick on anyone, where it'd be like, you know, you got the special little protein shake holder with the ball in it, so you went out and just bought something, and I don't know, my idea of like manliness is sometimes like you make do with what you have, but that's not reserved for men though. That is just like a good attitude person, right? Anywho, what I'm trying to say is don't be scared of the raspberry vinaigrette. It doesn't always have to be ranch. Can't really have ranch and apples anyway. Let's get the soup out. So something I really, really like about these bowls right here is that they're not white. So if you know what you're cooking, you can have a better idea about what you'll want your kitchen to look like. Because I cook a lot of potatoes. It's going to look pretty decent in the bowl right there. And boom, my portion sizes just keep on getting bigger. Now I wonder if I got enough salt in this. You'll put this back too. Like, it might look like a whole lot of salad, but it'll go down real quick. And then, since we're talking about farting on it, something that you should know is, like, how do you know if you're eating enough salads? I'm like, well, if you're still farting the leaf out on the other end, your body isn't used to, it's just like spitting it out because it's a real vegetable and your body doesn't know what to do with it. So keep it up. Don't be discouraged on that. Now, not everything's like that though. Like, if you're farting out corn, whole corn's coming out the other end, that means you're not cooking your corn long enough. Because corn, to make the proteins available for it, you actually have to cook it for, you know, even canned corn, you should probably still cook it for like another 15-20 minutes and it'll digest a lot easier in your system. I haven't really even gotten in on the soup yet though. And then you can kind of see the consistency that we went. It's not mashed potato, but it almost holds. And I didn't get this effect with any thickeners, just the right amount of water. And if you don't get it right, just know the best rule is that you can always add, but you can never take away. So it's better to have a soup that might be too thick, because you can always thin it out. But you're really going to be working backwards if you make your soup too thin and then you're trying to add in a bunch of vegetables back into it. Now this probably could have done with a little bit of pepper, but let's see how we did. Definitely more on the bland side. The celery comes out a little bit on it, and I get the onion keeps it from just tasting like potato as well. But we weren't going for something super fancy. And plus, that's why it's actually a nice dish. This is what I cooked for myself. So there's just no recipe. I just looked at the food that I had, and I put it together here on the plate. And I think this is what makes you a good home cook, is not letting the food go to waste, to make it appetizing and presentable, but also keeping all the people in your house healthy and safe, you know, facilitating a clean cooking environment for everyone. Because if you think about it, we're eating this for energy. So everything that's alive would want to eat this for energy. This is good food. Things will start growing from this. So it's important, especially leftovers. Like most of this soup here is going to be a leftover. I'm going to want to transfer it right away. Want to get it into the fridge as soon as possible, because the refrigerator is keeping at a temperature where the bacteria is multiplying at a slow rate. And if there's not other stuff eating your food, your food's not going to wilt. Also, with what we just did, bringing this to boiling, it's killed all the bacteria. So this is a very clean, safe food right here. That doesn't necessarily work, though, with all foods. One example of this is rice. Rice actually has bacteria on it that is heat resistant. So it doesn't matter what temperature you bring it to, that bacteria is there and it's not going away. That's why now you'll see some recipes though that actually taste better with day-old rice. But when you're cooking, you have to take into account the culture that the dish came from. You have to understand, what are they cooking with? You can't just take this one authentic way on how to do something, but then remove the soul that came with it. You have to understand that it all goes together. Because something that I don't know is that I know that some Mexican dishes specifically taste better with day-old rice. I don't necessarily know how to prepare rice as old as someone else could. I would only know, the best I would know how to do it is I would use just a day-old rice that had already gone from the stove, had the minimum time to incubate. I'm talking about like 1 hour of outside tops, no more than 1 hour, being served, people getting the food. I don't like using leftover rice at all. I only try to cook the right amount, just because I take that bacteria very seriously. And if you've ever had food poisoning, it's no fun. And if you want, like, the last thing that you want to do, like when you're cooking for someone else, is get them sick. Because you're really not going to get that many chances with someone trusting your cooking. But I think the potato soup, along with a nice salad, goes very well together. And I just want to point out just how well I'm eating. This is nothing but vegetables here. But all you needed to do, and I advertise this as a vegetarian cooking show, but all you needed to do, even if there's people with multiple different types of diets, all you need to do for the meat eaters out there, if you want to keep this vegetarian, like say there's one vegetarian and there's one meat eater, you cook it exactly like this, and you cook the meat on the side, and then you just add it on top of your dish. Cooking your meat for a really long time is not going to really help the flavor of the soup too much. Like, there's plenty. This soup is not very flavorful in the first point. It wasn't meant to be a flavorful soup. It was meant to be a cheap soup. The flavor is coming from our salad. Great punch. Sorry, I'm getting all distracted here, trying to actually fix this up so it actually covers the window correctly, so I don't have to close the window. I don't think that's going to happen. But my Boom. There we go. Much better. Sorry about that, folks. Anywho, we only have to just put this away. Let's. Now it's still very hot. One of the tricks I actually have, I will recommend a trick for this on what we're going to do, is like what I mean by how quickly you should move it from something that is hot to cold. Now in the restaurant industry, what we would do is that we'd actually have like an ice pack that we could put in this. What I want to do to cool the temperature down as rapidly as possible, I'm just going to move it into a whole new clean pot, and I'll put that in the refrigerator. I'll be able to use the same lid here. Now the thing, when you're pouring this, make sure it's all in the shot. This confidence is key. You have to just go for it. Alright, now we have something. Now it's still going to get hot again. Now I'm going to do two things. If you're worried about the bottom of your refrigerator, I have a plate, or you could put like hot pads. You could just put the hot pad in. And we got it in the refrigerator, and it's basically getting down to a done deal. We're going to rinse this out real quick. Now, there's kind of a couple of tricks that I'll talk a little bit more about with the hand washing of dishes. Now, just because I'm big on using the dishwasher doesn't mean that I don't know how to clean them by hand. And there's a couple of important things that will save you a lot of steps for when you have to wash dishes by hand. One of them is to make sure to always have a clean sink. And this is just like kind of a dumb thing. I'm just using my ladle to carry over something that just filled up. It's, just use what you have. And then going back over here. Now I need to wash everything. Add soap to the bottom. Just a little bit of soap. You don't need to use a ton of soap. A little seriously goes a very long way. And again, clean the sink bottom. And there's no knives in this. I left my knife specifically out over there. Now actually, we'll let that sit for a little bit. The next thing I'm going to do is this stuff has already been sitting out on drying, and I think one of my biggest gripes, and again, or just one of the faults in the system is that when you use this, there's all this to get it to the clean state, but then there is no, there's nothing more to get it to the put away state. So again, if I was cooking, I might still, like sometimes this meal is very easy. So the meal is already done at this point, but if I had more stuff to cook at this point, I can just be finishing hand drying with one of the extra towels I have, which you should have. We have talked about a broom, we've talked about hand soap, having a 9-piece set that includes the lids. We've talked about having a first aid kit. The next thing is towels, hand towels before hot pads. It would even because you can use towels as a hot pad at the end of the day. Nice and dry, and we'll put it away. So we don't actually have a place to put away our silverware, which is one of the reasons why it's been hanging out here. But my oh my, has it gotten late. I definitely snuck in this stream today. I just wanted to do a little something though. Again, you gotta make sure you wipe the outside of the pot as well. And again, it really doesn't take that much time to wash everything off when it hasn't been sitting. Even as little bit of time from dinner time to when people are done eating, that's too much time, and the food can already be crusted and it's just so much harder to get off. It's just not a good time. And this is why I say clean as you go, sign of a pro. Now, we only have one thing left to deal with. Which is we will give one more wipe of our work surface. We took a little bit of the soap from the sink. Oh, I missed one. And there you have it. You know, we have everything put away. Food's already put away. And we just have a little bit of food left to eat. And again, this is what we prepared today. It was just a very basic potato soup. All I did was a very just basic recipe. I used 6 potatoes, 4 cups of water, 1 onion, like about a tablespoon of peanut oil, but you can skip that part. Again, I'm sorry, I'll go over it again. In this dish here, 4 cups of water, 6 small to medium potatoes, 1 onion, and salt, and 1 celery, and half a head of iceberg lettuce went into here. This salad was a premix of the spring vegetables, 1 Honeycrisp apple, raspberry vinaigrette, and crumbled goat cheese. Now, this won't be the typical time I stream. Who knows, in fact, when the next time I'll be on the stream. But I'm very happy to see you all again. and you'll get plenty more from me. More like this too. Those that have been following me for a while know that I've been trying to do more of the impromptu stuff. You know, how do you eat day to day? How do you not get bored? I can show you how to do that. We can have a great time. Thank you all for joining me today. It's been lots of fun.